All right, welcome back now. Several terms have crept into our lexicon in recent years. One of them, of course, being fake news and all of that. But one very prominent one that seems to shine a lot lately is the talk about cancel culture. And a lot of us are still trying to figure out how that works and what throws you in that space. It also became a huge conversation in the last couple of days when acclaimed writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie wrote an essay, and the narrative there was basically about cancel culture, especially in the age of social media. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in this sector. I'm being joined online by Damilola Marcus, who's the founder of Market March. How are you doing, Damilola?
Hi, Ebuka.
Very well, thanks for joining us. So for those of us who might be watching and not be very familiar with this cancel culture term, what exactly is it?
I think it means so many different things to different people, but I think it's currently seen as the atmosphere where there's a lot of calling out happening that can influence people's careers, their livelihoods, ruin their reputations when they do a perceived wrong. It's a kind of accountability atmosphere that we have currently now, thanks to social media and all of those things that allow many people access to the same conversation at the same time.
Yeah. So I guess the question now is it a good thing? Because there's always arguments for and against it, where people say, okay, I mean, there are certain people who do really grave things and deserve, for want of a better word, to be cancelled. But there's also situations where we've seen people being cancelled, and it turns out that maybe they were wrongly accused or whatever the case is. Is it a good thing, you think?
Okay, so it's kind of like mob justice. In a way, it's mob justice evolved. It in itself can be good and it can also be bad. I think people have always wanted to speak truth to power, to be able to stand up for themselves. I mean, a celebrity who has the power to harass or assault people, there needs to be some way that the general public can hold such a person accountable. So in a way, it's a good thing because it allows a bit more balance of power between the people and people who have fame. However, just like how mob justice is simply insufficient form of justice, cancel culture as well is insufficient for the same pitfalls that we have with mob justice. Many people today don't feel like the current systems afford them the kind of justice they need. So it's a tricky one because this has an opportunity to make people feel vindicated, feel seen. But it also has the downsides where, like you said, either people are wrongly accused or things like that. And it also adds the layer of who determines what accountability looks like, who determines what wrong or right looks like. Are we still being controlled by those who have always had the power to? I guess those are really the big issues with it. Who is determining what right or wrong is? Who is controlling the narrative? I think that's the biggest thing with cancel culture today.
And I agree with you because a lot of the arguments against cancel culture has always said, who determines, what the benchmark here is? And I think former US President Obama did have an interview recently where he also talked extensively about cancel culture and spoke very vehemently against it. Especially from the fact that, there are people who make one error. I mean, we all have pasts. People dig up tweets, for example, from 10, 15 years ago and use that as a tool to cancel people a whole decade later, people who might have evolved. And I guess his case was, why not give people a second chance, Why are we in a space now where that is no longer existing? Is it a case of, social media seems, where a lot of people say it's like a drug now, where you cancel someone once and you feel the rush, like you feel like you've done something and you want to continue doing that. Is there an end to this even?
I think because social media is ultimately, in many ways, entertainment, it's also a way to let out a lot of pent-up energy. For many reasons, people are angry. So once there's someone who are we angry? There's a way I put it, who are we angry at today? What are we outraged about today? I think it's in many ways exploitative of people's emotions and also people's need to be entertained, rather. So in many ways, we can say that cancel culture is reflective of our boredom, of our natural human reaction to wrong. For instance, like anger, it's a reflection of our need for justice. However, I think it's important to have conversations around those boundaries that make it permissible to be able to say, okay, this person is actually deserving of canceling. And something else they will tell you is because there's not been any massive case of a massive celebrity going from grace to grass, so therefore cancel culture doesn't exist. I think that's a bit disingenuous, because the uncertainty of what happens when you're faced with thousands and sometimes millions of people coming at you, the uncertainty of what that means for you, your life, your sense of safety, your sense of security, all of those things contribute to a very strong atmosphere of fear, where it's not even only just the celebrities or the politicians who are afraid, it's everyday people who don't want to even have a taste of that experience.
So we're almost out of time, but I guess my question now is, there are people who believe that cancel culture is here to stay, because the way social media works, it's the voice of the people, and as long as you give a free space for people to have conversations, you really can't take that back anymore. So my question is, what does the ideal situation of cancel culture look like to you? I mean, we're seeing cases of what people now call doxing, where someone gets cancelled, and before you know it, the person's address, the person's phone number, and the person's place of work is put out online without, and these are things that are supposed to be private information. Where do you draw the line in an ideal case of cancel culture, if there is?
I think for me, visibility is important. So if there's someone who, for instance, we know, low-key, we know this person has been doing wrong, we know this person has been harming people, and we use social media as an opportunity to bring visibility to that conversation, there's that feels to me like a good way to use social media to get some form of accountability, and bring the right eyes on certain cases. We saw that with how the story of R. Kelly, for instance, went. I think we also need to have honest conversations around the difference between actual speech or actual conversations that are hateful, that are harmful, versus things that are uncomfortable. That's very important, because something is uncomfortable or because something is offensive to you does not make it hate speech. So that's very important. And I think it's also important for the academics, especially those in the humanities, to speak on social media in a way that is very accessible to everybody. I mean, words and the meaning of words are changing rapidly, and whoever controls language controls perception. Every day, words are changing. Violence, for instance, the meaning of that word has changed, and that makes it harder to have honest conversations with people, because we're not even walking on the same landscape. We don't know what the words you're using even mean. So the responsibility of those who have large followings, who have their blue checks, those who have degrees, the academics, it's important to speak in a way that we all already understand, so that there's no ambiguity around what we're determining as moral progress for everyone.
Thank you very much, Damilola. Hopefully things start looking up with regards to whatever this cancel culture is. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Hopefully by this time next Sunday, we would not be complaining about Twitter still being cancelled here in Nigeria. Free speech is very important to every one of us, and we hope that the government listens. Have a good day. I'll see you next Sunday.